hi, USPCA members. It's Larry Lynch back with another one of our periodic webinars to really bring you up to speed on the things you can do to make your business better, bigger, and more profitable. And one of the things we've talked about as an organization for a long time are some of the things you can do to grow your business. I know even some of the folks that we work with and some of our larger members have hired team and are trying to figure out, how do I do this personal chef thing with employees? And so with my thanks to our wonderful chefs up in New England, and particularly Laura. She was wonderful in sharing with us. Chef Laura shared with us Lauren McGrath from ADP. And I have to say that when I was running National Registry of Food Safety Professionals, when it was a standalone, we used ADP. And so I know the value of having someone that is really knowledgeable, not just in terms of being able to do payroll and the things that are important, but really that go-to person when you have personnel issues. You know, as I've been talking to media about all the things that have to happen in the restaurant world, one of my reminders to people are about policies and procedures, and it's about thinking through HIPAA, a lot of the idiosyncrasies in having employees. Having people work for you is a great way to grow your personal chef business because you can reach boundaries that you haven't touched before. But what you want to be able to do is avoid the pitfalls. So I'm not going to steal Lauren's thunder. She's got a lot to share with us tonight. And so I'm excited. I know Lauren McDougall just dropped a note to us, Lauren, so I'll read that one to you later. I'll remind everybody that if you have questions tonight, drop them into chat, drop them into Q&A. We'll share them with Lauren once she's done her presentation. I have a few questions for her as well. But please, you've got an expert tonight. So please take advantage of the fact that Lauren's here on board with us and ask her questions. And Lauren, at this point, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Well, thank you so much for that lovely introduction. I am so excited to be here with you all tonight. And, thank you, Laura, for making the introduction and Larry organizing this tonight. I am, very excited to hopefully share some valuable information with you all today about what it means to be a growing business. So before we get started, I want to make sure that I formally introduce myself so you all know who the heck it is you're chatting with tonight. So as Larry mentioned, my name is Lauren McGrath. I am a small business specialist at ADP. I am from Boston. I live there now. I'm born and raised in Massachusetts, Western Mass specifically, if any of you guys are familiar with the geography of the state. So I was born and raised in Western Mass, finished out high school, packed my bags, went to New York and went to college at a small school called Siena College. If any of you guys know it, throw a little shout out in the comment section here. Maybe we have a fellow saint. But finished my undergrad there and headed back to Massachusetts and have been in Boston ever since. So, I don't know if any of you guys kind of read that little, about me piece on the webinar invite. A little corny, but yes, as a New Englander, very big Patriots fan. So, of course, Tom Brady leaving us was heartbreaking, and nonetheless, he announced it on St. Patrick's Day, which is sort of like getting dumped on your birthday for us Bostonians. So that definitely hurt, but still very, very proud to be a New Englander. For you guys, I'm sure you would appreciate my love for food. I'm a huge foodie. I, love traveling the city, trying all the different restaurants. Big fan of Italian food. I spend a lot of time in the North End, which is the Italian neighborhood of the city. Cannolis are my favorite. So if any of you guys can make a killer cannoli, please connect with me afterwards. I would, love to sample that. But, from a professional standpoint, I have been with ADP for the last 3 years, and I specifically focus in on the small business sector. So I'm having conversations on a daily basis with people like yourselves, small businesses who are really looking to take it to the next level. And what does that mean for them? How are they going to grow? What do they need to know? I'm having conversations around payroll and compliance and HR and policies and everything that businesses need to understand in order to take it to the next level. So of course, yes, I am Boston based, but I work with small businesses across the country. So I know we probably have members, throughout the country joining us tonight. So, looking forward to learning a little bit more about who you guys are and maybe where you're located. But, I definitely do work with everyone throughout the country. So really what today is going to be about is exactly what Larry had said, right? What do you need to know as a growing business, and how are you going to take your business to the next level? So what I want to talk about tonight is some of those business responsibilities. What do you need to understand? What are you responsible for as an employer? What are your employees responsible for? And then we're going to talk about hiring and onboarding, and then paying employees, and of course, where to get help. Growing a business is challenging. There's a lot of hats you wear, and you don't have to do it alone. People like myself and ADP as a whole are there to support you and your growing business. So would love you guys to, jot some questions down as I go. I think we'll do a Q&A at the end of the presentation. So really looking forward to answering some of those questions. So just keep note of them. And yeah, we'll jump right into it. All right, so the first thing I wanted to address is kind of the landscape that we're all living in, the landscape of 2020. And I think we all can agree that 2020 has been one of the most unique years that we have probably all experienced, right from the start. I mean, we had threats of World War III, and then, this thing came around called COVID that nobody really knew about, but now our lives are, pretty much dictated by COVID-19. So, when we think about 2020 and specifically the effects of COVID-19, the main word I think of is adapting, right? And that's what you see right on the screen, adapting, because everybody has had to adapt in some way or another. Whether that means, just on an individual basis, you're getting used to wearing a mask everywhere you go, or, you're working from home, and what does that look like having a house full of people, and you're also trying to focus in on your daily tasks for the day. And then from a business standpoint, right, there's so many adaptations that businesses have had to make. And I'm going to ask you guys to think about it. When you think about your business and your mission, where do you feel like you're falling? We see a spectrum here, and we have on one end businesses that are in survival mode. So, those businesses that have seen a decrease in demand, and, business has been negatively impacted by COVID-19. And when I think about these businesses in survival mode, I think about, those cash-based businesses, those businesses that have heavy foot traffic. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have those businesses that are thriving, right? Those businesses that have seen an increase in demand, business has never been better, and they're really thriving and having a positive impact of the environment that is today. And when I think about thriving, the best example I can give you guys is Amazon, right? I don't know about you, but my family probably gets a package a day. And honestly, it's getting a little out of control. The number of times the Amazon Prime truck is up and down my driveway. But that is just an awesome example of a thriving business. And through conversations with Larry prior to the call, he was kind of saying that, especially within your industry, there might be a unique area of opportunity for you all as private chefs, right? Because people are staying at home. Their normal routines are disrupted, and they're nesting. So when I think about this, I think people are working from home. Maybe both spouses are at home. They're trying to teach, 3 kids with online schooling, and they need help. And you guys are there to help them, meal prep, make sure that, things are ready to go for them as they enter their busy week. So really what I want to help you guys understand is, how do you become a thriving business, and what support and resources and knowledge do you need to capitalize on this opportunity and take your business to the next level? So, you're probably at the point where it's been you, right? You've been running your business, you've established yourself, you have a really great customer base, and maybe, you've hired some consultants or some freelancers, but you're at the point where, maybe you have an increase in demand, or you're just really looking to take it to the next level, and you need a game plan, right? You can't go in it blind. You need to understand what it is that's going to elevate your business. Now, when I think of your industry as a whole, I think of 2 main scenarios. So I see those who have been operating by themselves, have really been a one-man show, have established themselves, have worked really hard to build a name and produce their clientele. And they're at the point where they're becoming profitable. And they need to think about, okay, I'm making a profit and I need to pay myself. What does that look like? How am I showing income? How am I paying taxes? What do I need to know in order to cut myself a paycheck? And then, we have the scenario where you might, still be very well established, but you're at the point where your business opportunities are surpassing the amount of effort that you can put in solely. You need to add somebody to your team to help you take your business to the next level and expand your clientele. And in both scenarios, a lot of thought needs to go into next steps. So new business responsibilities is right up on the screen here, and there's a long list of things you're going to want to keep in mind as you think about next steps. And this might look overwhelming, right? You might be looking at this screen and thinking, oh gosh, I don't even know what half of these things are. And that is okay. It's not your job to understand this, but it's really great that you're here, because we're going to walk you through everything that you need to know in order to elevate your business. So the first thing I want to touch on today is hiring and onboarding. So when you think about taking your business to the next level, it might include adding some staff members. And when you think about the life cycle of an employee, the first thing you need to do is hire, right? And with any business, your employees are your biggest asset. And especially with your industry, right? When I think about your industry, I'm thinking, your food is probably only as good as those who are making it and those who are producing it. So if you're not hiring that top talent, your name might suffer, right? If they're not able to produce the caliber of food that you guys are used to delivering, it could suffer. So you need to find that top talent, right? You need to find that asset to your business to help you grow. And while people can be the biggest asset to a corporation, they can also be a corporation's biggest liability. So, thinking about how are we hiring, how are we going about it the right way is really what I want to jump into. So when you think about hiring employees, it might be really easy to kind of skip over the phase of due diligence. Maybe you're spread too thin and you really just need somebody to come on board with your team and fill that void and kind of take over some of the responsibility that you've had completely on your shoulders. And I urge you that cutting corners is not the way to do it, right? Because at the end of the day, a bad hire is not only time consuming, but it can be extremely costly for your business to replace, because you're putting time into, first finding the new hire, training them, and then, for them not to work out, it's a lot of time, energy, and money wasted. So there's some key things you want to think about as you look to hire, to make sure that you're finding somebody who really believes in your values and is going to support the growth of your business. So where do you start, right? Where do you look? Now, I think the most obvious answer is your personal network. I think a lot of people dip into that, and that's awesome, right? I think some of the best hires come from people or somebody that someone else knows, but you can't just stop there. You have to cast your net wide, right? Because, it's only limited. It's a limited network, and just because it's your neighbor's cousin doesn't mean it's going to be the best for your business and help your business grow and take you to the new level. So obviously we're going to be thinking about our personal network, but we also want to think about how are we going to use social media and our social presence to attract top talent. Now, I'll tell you that millennials are entering the workforce, right? They're kind of taking over for the baby boomers. And one thing we know about millennials is that they're very tech-based. They love social media. So if you guys have a social media presence, use that to your advantage. Post on your Instagram or your Facebook that you're hiring, or, post it on your website and see if you can get any traction that way. And then, of course, you want to think about job boards. And now this is a huge area of opportunity, in my opinion, because it allows you to really cast that net wide and really push your name out on various platforms. So the job board that ADP has a relationship with is ZipRecruiter. So I'm very familiar with ZipRecruiter, but some of the other big names out there might be Indeed or Monster. I know people have a lot of success on LinkedIn, but thinking about using these job boards is a great place to start. So ZipRecruiter in particular actually shows a lot of success within the food industry. People who within your industry have the most success using ZipRecruiter. And 80% of businesses who post a job on ZipRecruiter find a qualified candidate within the first 24 hours. So that's huge, right? It's just helping you expand your network and find that top talent. So the other thing you need to think about is your job post. How are you marketing yourself? Because at the end of the day, you know, people have choices. There's other places, you know, besides you hiring. So how are you going to make yourself an employer of choice? How are you going to brand yourself and say, come work for me. This is why I'm great. And this is why this is why you're going to want to work for me because of my culture or, you know, whatever it is that makes you unique. So when you're thinking about creating a job post, I urge you to incorporate this. I think it's going to be a huge differentiator between you and your neighbor. And then, of course, as you're thinking about these job ads, you're going to want to think about, you know, what you're going to include to really give that candidate an inside scoop of what it is you're willing to offer. So the number one thing that candidates are looking for in job ads is compensation. So if you're not including some sort of compensation package or alluding to the type of package that you're willing to offer, you're probably weeding out 50% of the candidates who are scrolling through job posts. And then the second most sought after piece of information on a job post is benefits. Now, of course, benefits in the traditional sense includes health insurance or retirement, but it doesn't just stop there, right? And for you guys, when I think about your industry, you might be just starting out or you might be on the smaller side of things. You might think, well, you know, I'm not really in a position to offer these sort of benefits and, you know, still remain profitable or have it, you know, make sense for my business to offer these sort of benefits. And that's okay. You know, there's plenty of other ancillary benefits that you can offer as an employer to remain that employer of choice. So some of those might be flexible hours, overtime opportunities, vacation time. You know, these are all really valuable perks that candidates are looking for. And just because it's not health insurance or retirement doesn't mean it's going to be a valuable ad for a candidate. And then of course, you know, when you're thinking about what that job ad looks like, you want to include skills and experience required for the role. Kind of a no-brainer there. So thinking about this, you know, you post your job, you get some hits on maybe a job board, maybe you're using ZipRecruiter and you find some really great candidates that you're super excited about. You know, you can't wait to screen them and talk a little bit more with them. So what does that next stage look like? So when you're thinking about, you know, these candidates that you found, the first step is pre-screening them. So the most obvious way to pre-screen an employee would be a resume review. You know, checking the resume, making sure that their qualifications align with what you are looking for. If so, great. You know, you move on to the interview phase. And the interview phase can be really crucial. It helps you understand who this person is, what their goals are, if their goals align to the goals of the business, and really helps you understand if they're going to be a good fit in helping your business, you know, take you to the next level. And when you think about interview questions, one thing to keep in mind is kind of standardizing those questions and making sure that there's no unconscious biases. So, you know, when I was hired at ADP 3 years ago, I was asked the same set of interview questions as somebody who was hired a month ago. You know, making sure that there's consistency in those questions is really important because, like I said, you don't want to, you know, come across any unconscious biases. And then, you know, background checks are always a great idea to run before you do take on a new hire. So, you know, you go through this pre-screening process and say, you found somebody that you think is a great fit. They pass all of your pre-screening qualifications, and you're ready to bring them on board. You know, you give them a job offer and they accept, and you couldn't be more excited. So we have to think about what the next step is at that point. And that usually is paperwork. Now, paperwork can be somewhat of a daunting task, you know, especially for people who aren't in the realm of, you know, accounting or bookkeeping, or, you know, just really starting off, or this is your first employee. Like, where do you find answers? So the things you need to think about are those new hire pieces of paper, such as W-4s, I-9s, and any local and state specific documentation, of course. So one thing to keep in mind is that these forms change a lot. I think in 2018, the form I-9 changed twice, and the beginning of 2020, a new W-4 was released. So making sure that you're finding the most up-to-date paperwork is really important. And then, of course, storing it properly. Now, something really funky that everybody, you know, doesn't believe when I say is, if you are an employer and you have someone's W-4 and I-9, say, in the same folder, in the same file cabinet, you're actually out of compliance, because it's so easy to steal someone's identity with just those two pieces of paper. So, you know, understanding this and making sure these documents are stored properly is really important. And of course, you know, there's resources for you to lean on, like ADP or myself, for you to understand, you know, what the most up-to-date paperwork is. But just, you know, keeping this in the back of your mind, that this is something you're going to want to be aware of as you start to onboard these employees. And then, you know, Larry had hit on it at the beginning of the presentation. You know, what sort of policies do you need to keep in mind as you think about bringing somebody onto your team? Now, company policies are probably the best way to protect your business, specifically an employee handbook. And if you think about an employee handbook, you know, it really is just a protection policy. You know, you're protecting your business among a lot of different things. So I actually, you know, a quick story for you guys. I actually worked with a bakery when I first started here, and you know, I sat down with the owner, and she had said, "Lauren, we're a really small bakery. You know, it's kind of a mom and pop shop. I have 5 employees. I don't really feel the need to implement a handbook." And, you know, I explained to her why it is so important. And, you know, she just was adamant that she did not want to implement anything like this. So, you know, I said, okay. And sure enough, 3 months later, I get a call from her. And she explained to me that she had this employee who she ultimately caught stealing from the register. And of course, you know, she confronted her and terminated her. But this employee then turned around and started claiming unemployment. And it affected her unemployment rate as a business owner. So, you know, she went and she tried to fight this, but there was no employee handbook in place. There was no strike process. There was no proper termination process in place. So unfortunately, she lost this claim, this fight. So, you know, when I think about an employee handbook, I think about just protecting your business from scenarios like this. And you might think, you know, I'm so small, but as you start to hire employees, it is just so important. I like to think of it as a smoke alarm or a fire detector, right? You don't want to use it, but you want to know that when you're sleeping at night, it's there in case anything does happen. And, you know, something that you need to think about as well is COVID-19 and in the landscape that we're living in, and what that looks like in terms of regulations. So I'm going to assume that many of you are probably entering clients' houses, and, you know, you might be in close contact with, you know, many people within your network. So you need to think about, how are you going to protect yourself and protect your customers? So having really clear guidelines in place and expectations for your employees, so they understand, you know, what is and what is not okay, is very important. And, you know, the best way to protect your business, like I said. So employee handbooks and any other sort of written documentation for company policies and expectations is extremely important, along with that new hire paperwork. So, once you do present all this paperwork, your employee signs it, you're ready to go, you've collected it, you're super excited to get them started. There's a couple other things you want to think about. First is labor law posters. You definitely don't want to be caught without a labor law poster. And then workers' compensation. So workers' compensation is something that is required in some states and optional in others. As long as you have employees, I would recommend looking into workers' compensation. Within the state of Massachusetts, it is something that is required. As long as you do have employees, you are required to have workers' compensation. So that does vary on a state-by-state basis. So you'll definitely need to do a little bit of research depending on where you're located, but it is something to keep in the back of your mind because it could be a compliance concern. So we've hired our employee, right? We collected all the paperwork and we're ready to go. We're super excited. They've started, working for a week or two, and now it's payday. Right? Probably the most exciting day of the week for your employee, but perhaps the most dreaded for you because it means that wages are coming out of your bank account. And this is also where that first scenario I had talked about earlier, where you might be at the stage that you're looking to put yourself on payroll and think about how are you going to show income and how are you going to, pay yourself, kind of comes back into play. So, we need to think about what does paying ourselves and our employees look like? What are our responsibilities as an employer? And, what is your employee responsible for? So when we think about payroll, first thing that comes to mind is taxes, unfortunately, right? We're all used to them. It's not a foreign concept for us, but something that, you may or may not be aware is that employers do pay taxes on their employees. So that's comprised of Social Security tax, Medicare, FUTA, and SUTA. So SUTA is actually state unemployment, and that is the only controllable tax. And it does vary by state. So, you would have to either connect with me or do a little bit of research on what that looks like based on where you're located. But like I said, it is the only controllable tax. So if you have people who are, filing unemployment claims as employees, your rate would go up. And then if you have no claims or, you haven't had a claim in a very long time, that rate would generally stay pretty low. So it is something that is controllable, which is kind of unique. But, these are the taxes that you can expect to pay as an employer. And then when we think about employees, of course, they are responsible for taxes themselves. And as an employee, you do take on a little bit more of a burden when it comes to taxes. So we think about Social Security tax and Medicare tax. And then we also have federal income and state income tax. And then we have state-specific taxes. So I put an example here, PFML, which is a Massachusetts specific. It's something that comes out of my paycheck every 2 weeks. So I know a lot of other states do have something similar to this, but you'd really, need to, again, do a little research or connect with me or an advisor to understand what state-specific, if any, taxes you might, be responsible for paying on your employee's behalf or withholding for your employee. So, this is pretty straightforward, right? Just wanted to remind you guys of the taxes that, you as an employer would be responsible for, as well as your employee. And what, you really need to think about, though, is how are you withholding these taxes? So, of course, we can talk about these taxes all day, but at the end of the day, you do need to withhold them and pay them. That's where you run into the problem. So how are you withholding and paying these taxes as a business owner on behalf of your business and your employees? So this can look a little intimidating, but the first thing you need to think about is registering your business with the appropriate tax agencies. So what that means is registering your business with the Department of Revenue or the Department of Unemployment. And essentially what that means is you would receive a tax ID number that is your ID or your identification for filing on behalf of the business with the appropriate agencies. Once you do that, you're ready to calculate and withhold taxes. So that's another thing you need to think about, calculating and actually taking those taxes out of your employees or your own paycheck. And then you have to file them. So not to really get into the weeds here too much, but generally filings happen on a monthly or quarterly basis. So you have to keep that in mind, as well as the tax forms that come along with it. So the most relevant, or the tax form that you guys probably are most familiar with, is maybe that W-2 or 1099. We have Form 940s and 941s. So, this is where it can kind of get a little bit complicated, especially if you don't come from a realm of, math or accounting or bookkeeping. This is not your strong suit, right? You guys are chefs. That's what you do best. You shouldn't have to worry about this. I'm sure you all wear so many different hats throughout the day that you don't need another, and you don't need to be, spending your time on things like this, calculating taxes and then figuring out how to pay them. So that's why, you can really lean on people such as ADP or myself. And when you look at this list, these are things that, you can get support on, and we can help you do. So kind of moving into, the next portion here is how do you get help, right? You're not in this alone. I'm sure I've presented some information that might be a little scary or overwhelming, but like I said, it's not something that you need to navigate solely. There's so many resources like ADP out there to help you figure out what you need to do to stay in compliance and to take your business to the next level, right? Because at the end of the day, you should just be focusing on you and cooking and growing your business. So when we think about outsourcing these responsibilities, we think about, outsourcing to service bureaus. So ADP is one of them. There's some other service bureaus out there that you might be familiar with. But the idea is that, you're really offloading these sort of responsibilities onto someone like us, so it'll save you time, right? Like I said, you wear so many different hats. Don't make payroll and HR another one of them. And, one of the other best parts about using a third-party vendor is that you're reducing your company's liability. So basically, when you hire someone like ADP, you're passing that liability right off to them. It is no longer your responsibility. They are now responsible for calculating and withholding and filing those taxes on your behalf. And the other plus side to this is they help you monitor compliance. So, just this year alone, so many things have changed in terms of legislation and what that looks like from a compliance standpoint. So, partnering with somebody who has their hand in the industry will really allow you to focus on your core competencies, focus on revenue generating tasks, focus on cooking, focus on hiring, and focus on, adding new customers to your base. While someone like ADP focuses on monitoring new legislation and keeping you guys updated with compliance concerns and trends, whether that's new W-4s or labor law posters, or even like concerns with HIPAA, right? Making sure that you guys understand what it is you can and cannot say, and making sure that you guys are having the right type of conversations with your employees. And then another huge area of benefit is the flexibility in the self-service model. So when you think about running payroll, if you were to do everything we had talked about in-house by yourself, you'd probably have to carve out, I don't know, a couple hours every other Friday to run a payroll. And it's time consuming. It's probably not worth your time, and it doesn't give you the flexibility to be out and about and cooking and being in your clients' homes. So partnering with a service bureau really gives you that opportunity to run payroll on the go and access things like HR tools and infrastructure on the go, and really give your employees some self-service options so they feel connected with their pay and they understand what sort of taxes they are seeing come out of their paycheck, because they have their own portal and they have their own self-service platform. Now, when we specifically think about ADP and what we can do to assist you and support your business. Of course, we can help you run your payroll. That's what we're known for, right? We're a payroll company, but we can do so much more than just payroll. But the best thing is you can just enter in your employees, your hours or their salary or your own, and we will calculate the taxes and we'll withhold, we will pay on your behalf, and then we'll just cut your employee or yourself a paycheck, or send that directly into your bank account. And then of course we have some of the support from an HR infrastructure aspect. So I'd mentioned ZipRecruiter and getting a little assistance when it comes to hiring and partnering with a job board. We also have an HR help desk. So this is an awesome resource where it's essentially a call center. You can call in and say, hey, I have a question. This came up in, our day-to-day procedures, and I don't know how to handle it. Or perhaps you're conducting an interview and you just need some interview questions. You can call into this team and receive the guidance that you're looking for. And then, of course, employee handbooks. I had really emphasized how important it is to have some sort of, handbook in place to really put policies and procedures in motion, so your employees know what to expect when they are at work. And then one other one that I like to highlight is performance toolkit. So I think performance toolkits kind of has a negative connotation, but today it's just such a great opportunity for you to really monitor your employees' performance and really the health of their day-to-day operations and how they're positively impacting the organization. So ADP actually had performance reviews just earlier this week, and it was very positive. Everybody got an increase in their base salary. So there's really great opportunities like that. And of course, we'll give you the tools to help understand what those could look like, and help your employees really feel like you're invested in them. So they want to come to work. They want to work harder. They know that performance review is coming up and they really want to impress you and maybe take their career to the next level. And in turn, that's helping you take your business to the next level. So, moving into the next slide here, I started the presentation off by addressing the environment that we're living in, right? And I'm kind of going to finish with that. So as you think about taking your business to the next level and everything that I've presented to you, you have to think about who you're going to partner with to really gain the support on the back end. And I think it's really important that you understand who ADP is when you're thinking about potentially forming a partnership with them. We are one of the biggest payroll companies in the world. With that, we have 70 plus years of experience. We've survived 10 different recessions, over 700,000 business clients. But we're also that small business specialist. We're helping people just like you who might only want to run a payroll once a month or once a quarter, maybe even annually. So we really have that small business expertise. As you can see, we've actually won a small business payroll award. So, kind of like I said, I just think it's really important that you understand who it is you'd be partnering with, what they have to offer, as you think about, taking your business to the next level. So that's really all I have for you guys. I definitely want to open it up to some questions because I'm sure what I, went over is somewhat hard to digest in certain areas. So I definitely want to give you guys the opportunity to ask me some questions and one-off with me. My contact information is below too if you do want to reach out to me with any additional questions. So I guess I will pass it over to the Q&A box and see how this works.
I'll turn to the Q&A box here for you, Lauren. So first of all, thank you for this. And just a reminder to everybody that we'll get this edited and up so that you'll have all of Lauren's information up on our YouTube channel here very shortly. Not very shortly, but once we're done, we have a chance. So probably by tomorrow at some point, it'll be up and running. But sure. More than a few questions. So let's dive right into that, which I think would be helpful. And I love it because some of our members are asking questions that I had planned to ask. So that's great. But I'm going to start off with, where's the best place for an owner to do a background check on new employees?
Yeah, so I could probably dig up some third-party vendors. I, obviously am, work with ADP, and we actually offer that service to our clients. So If you chose to partner with ADP, we could offer that for you depending on, the package that you're looking for. We could offer up to 25 a year. And it comes in a variety of different background checks. So whether you just want the standard, Social Security and criminal record check, or if you want to do a drug test or driving record, we have those options. But that's my knowledge kind of extends to ADP's partnership, but I'm more than happy if I'm not sure who asked that question, but if you want to connect with me on a one-off, I can definitely put together a list of vendors that might be a good option for you to partner with and move forward with background checks.
Awesome. And then when you're paying yourself as the owner, how do you plug that in? So, it used to be just kind of a gross income for me, then in deductions for the expenses. But now with payroll, I've got to choose the amount that you pay for yourself, and then there's money left for the employees. Is there a way to calculate that? Is that something that you can help with?
So when it comes to actually calculating the amount that you want to pay yourself, I would recommend getting together with a tax advisor, maybe your accountant, and discussing that with them. They'll have more of the ins and outs of, how much you're making, what your revenue is looking like, and how much they think you can afford to pay yourself. If you can provide us with a figure, we're more than happy to show you what that breaks down, or what that breakdown looks like. We can vary the tax contributions depending on if you feel like you need to contribute more as an owner. But I would definitely say that's probably a question to really lean on for a trusted tax advisor.
Yeah, because I think to your point, the tax implications here are the bigger piece, right? So
Yes.
Before it was just, gross less expenses, here's what I keep in terms of net profit. But now all of a sudden, I've got some additional costs that I've got to pay attention to with probably, the tax implications, only because at the end of the day, if you get that wrong, the longer term implications there are even worse, right?
Exactly. Yes. You don't want to get that wrong. So definitely turn to more of a tax advisor for that.
Perfect. This next question from one of our members in California, but I actually had the same question. It's how do we know whether or not we should hire independent contractors, the 1099s, versus W-2 employees? This was specific to California, but I was going to ask you the same question in general.
Yeah, so that's actually a really great question. I think that's something that a lot of small business owners, kind of debate over. Are they a contractor? Are they a true W-2 employee? And I think you have to think about, how often are you providing them work? Are they working for you on a somewhat regular basis? I think if you can answer yes to that question, it's a pretty clear indicator that they probably should be a W-2. If you're hiring, somebody who's not really in the nature of your business, they don't work for you that frequently, they might be a better fit for a 1099, contract employee. But there is, they call it like a 3-point test. And I do have some literature I could send out afterwards if that's something of interest, that kind of gives you a clear breakdown of, okay, this person meets these requirements, they should be a W-2, and so forth.
Laura, if you could send that to me, and I'll make sure we get it uploaded with.
Yeah, let me make a note of that.
Perfect.
Sure.
So, kind of thinking back to this world we're in with COVID, and the fact that we sometimes need to talk to our employees before they go to work and making sure their health. Are there pitfalls we should be watching out for when it comes to HIPAA? So we want to do a pre-work check, and have they been exposed to COVID? What does that mean? And I know in my work, I'm doing a lot of discussions with the CDC on let's define what exposure means and what does that look like. But at the end of the day, are there things that our members can't ask or should ask that don't run afoul of the various privacy laws?
Yeah, so that's something that you do want to keep in mind. You don't want to cross any sort of boundaries when it comes to your employees and their health. Like you mentioned, there's HIPAA laws, and some of the great things about ADP is if you do have some sort of health insurance integrated with our platform, we do provide a service number that your clients or your employees, can reach out to and get information in regards to health insurance. So you're not that middleman, and you're not exposing yourself to opportunities for HIPAA violations. And then, when it comes to COVID, that's definitely something that we're all trying to navigate. It's something new. It's something that I think we're learning every day about how to handle. And there's certain, procedures you could say in place and how you should be handling that, simple questionnaires or, even as far as checking somebody's temperature before they enter work or asking them simple screening questions are okay. And they are encouraged in some scenarios, especially for an industry like yours where you are entering people's homes and you might be risking the potential to expose others and clients. I think, it's just really understanding what is maybe COVID related and appropriate to ask first, what is specifically health related that, an employer really shouldn't, need to be a part of the conversation.
It's probably a good opportunity to make sure that you have policies and procedures in place that are
exactly right. So there you go. You definitely want to have some written policies and procedures. And I think COVID is probably one of the biggest trigger events to really having something in writing. So employees understand, what is expected of them, along with, what they can and do and don't have to share.
Okay. One of the things that always kind of cracks me up a little bit, and because we get them in our office, and with the whole world kind of working on, remote right now, and I think more companies probably going to remote, and for our members in particular, who, if you own the personal chef business, you're probably running out of your house. Where the heck do you put labor law posters?
That's true. So I would say if you have a home base, an area of business, say you have an office, you want to just hang it up there. Of course, if there's no real home base and there's no area of opportunity to hang something like that up, that's more of a one-off situation and that might look a little bit different. But if you have some sort of office space where, your employees might frequently visit or what have you, definitely just putting it up in the corner is a really smart move. But of course, there are those situations where you're just running around, you don't really have a home base. So, maybe sending out certain posters at the beginning of the year to employees to say, hey, this is, the labor law poster of the year, acknowledge it at least, is a really smart thing to moving forward.
I would think overall our members don't have to worry about the poster police knocking on their door to shut them down, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, there's no poster police coming over, but it is just a good practice to have in place. Say you're a caterer or something like that, and you do have your own kitchen, you want to make sure that that's up there. But of course, for this group, it might not be realistic.
One of our members, I won't identify who it was, said, I have world headquarters here at the home, but nobody will ever see that poster. So, and that's okay.
Yes.
I think we're all, and quite frankly, I think even bigger businesses are going to be dealing with that because we're all talking about,
working from home and
yeah. Where's that
yes.
going to go? One of the hardest parts, I think, is finding the right employee. And I know over time I've talked to our members who have had employees and stopped having employees and the challenges they've run into. I mean, do you have tips or things that someone should look for when in the interview process to kind of weed out the poor performers and identify the rock stars?
Yeah, I think there's such a war on talent right now, especially prior to COVID, unemployment was at an all-time low and business owners were really looking for that top talent. And it was at the point where, if you weren't taking somebody away from a current position, they probably, didn't have a position for a reason. So you're really making sure that your hiring process is tight is important and making sure that you're really doing your due diligence when it comes to screening and resume review and interview questions. So coming with a prepared list of interview questions that will really help you determine if they are a great fit based on culture and skill, maybe asking some specific questions about experiences and, maybe situational. If you were in this situation, what would you do? So you can identify, if somebody's just bluffing you, if you will, or if they actually are qualified to be a part of your team. And I think, kind of going back to those job posts, if you're looking at job boards and posting job positions that way, it is really important to be specific with the sort of qualifications you're looking for. So, you're not having mechanics apply because, they think, oh, well, I could learn how to be a chef. It's very tailored to, what it is your mission, what your mission is and your qualifications.
Yeah, because I do think there's that piece that, that ability to cook is one thing, but then that ability to be a good employee, changes
Yeah.
things pretty dramatically.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely.
you know, one of the things that one of our members asks here, which is a great question, is there some kind of link that could be sent out to employees for the labor law posters? And I was kind of thinking the same thing. Is there a way, do we post it up on our websites so that our employees can see it? Is there a way in this virtual world that we can be in compliance, demonstrate compliance, but not have to think about this crazy stuff? So I think it's a great question that Katie asked is there a link that perhaps we can just share with people who work for us?
Yeah, so that is an awesome question. And I think it's something that, we need to think about now more than ever as we're, working and social distancing. But, specifically with ADP, what we allow our clients to do is basically create all of these documents electronically. So that might include, employee handbooks or just specific company policies and procedures, labor law posters, new legislation that your employees need to acknowledge. What we can do is create those electronically, and either send them out for electronic signatures, or, you could always download them as a PDF, print and send to your employee, have them sign and send back. But, I would recommend going the electronic route because you can take an email, save it in your important folder draft and say, I sent this to Joe on this date at this time with a red receipt. So it just proves that you did your due diligence, you sent it out, the employee opened and it acknowledged, or even better yet, signed. And then what, I recommend is you store that safely. And with ADP, what we can do is actually store that within a cloud-based system where you have access to tons of different documents as well as your business specific documents. So it just really gives you a paper trail, and helps show that you took the proper steps to notifying your employees of such changes.
Awesome. And Chef Norbert asks a great question here, which is kind of the chicken and egg conundrum, but it's and this is in your opinion, but he's asking, what's the right approach in your opinion? Hiring and then grow the business, or grow the business and then hire?
Yeah, I guess that's an interesting question. I worry that, if you hire and you can't have, or you don't have the business to keep these people occupied, it could be somewhat detrimental to your cash flow. But then again, you run into the scenario where you have too much business and you don't have anybody to help you out, you're spread too thin. So, I mean, it's not the best answer, but like a healthy balance between the two. As you start to pick up business, you think about, hiring, and maybe you can predict that, you might have some contracts coming in or some new business in the future, and you start thinking about your hiring process and maybe starting to weed out some candidates. So when the time does come, you've had some experience and some knowledge within that hiring field, and you feel a little more prepared walking into those situations.
Yeah, I'm going to add to that from my own business experience.
Yeah.
It really comes down to having a hiring plan. And,
Sure.
and to that point is you're building up the business, but knowing you've got trigger points that say, at this point, I know I can't handle it all, but I've
Mhm.
begun to understand the kinds of people who I want to hire, what I'm looking for. I'm actually going through some of that right now, actually.
Yeah.
And so it's that chance to really understand finding that best possible talent because you've uncovered the needs that you have. And sometimes if you go out and hire first, like, oh crap, they don't fit.
Right.
And versus, okay, I've got this. I've hit the trigger point. I've identified the kind of talent I need. I've already started sourcing them. So I would almost say it's really part of having a good ongoing plan. None of it should be, kind of shooting from the hip. It really should be, okay, I know where I want to go. I hit this. I'm going to pull the trigger and get the person on board and get them to do the right things.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
It's pragmatic.
So this is another good question. Most of us, again, the chefs are one in the business. in order to get to two and maintain the income, you would have to double the current business. You would have to sacrifice your income. So I think that it's the comment, and I think that's right. You know that obviously you're thinking about the fact if I got another person, you've got to, and I would say you don't just double the current business. You got to more than double because it's not just what you're paying the person; it's all the ancillary pieces that you got to take into consideration as well. So I think having that number is critically important. And
Yeah.
Norbert, thank you. Norbert agreed with me, so I feel good. I got it. So yeah, I think it's really important to have that piece together. I wanted to get back to another question. We were talking a couple minutes ago about hiring. The flip side of that is we've made a bad hire. You know, are there things that are triggers that we should be watching for if we have to let someone go? Is there a counseling piece that we should be doing first? You know, do we just say you're fired, you're gone?
Yeah.
You know, what's the risk factor there? Because it's so easy to get sued. There are lawyers that
Yeah.
specialize in this and can't wait to come after you. And of course, you know, the pain point there is you're going to have, not only do you have to pay potentially the former employee, but you got to pay their legal fees too, and you got to pay your legal fees. So it becomes much costlier to make the right decision up front. Are there things and tips and tricks that you can suggest if you have to let somebody go?
Yeah, you know, I think it's getting harder and harder to terminate someone properly today. You know, there are a lot of policies and procedures that you need to go through as an employer to cover yourself and your business. So, like you said, you don't get sued for wrongful termination. I think the best thing you can have in place is, you know, a handbook. This is what is expected of you. This is where you know, say we have a time policy, right? You are expected to be on time. If you know are not meeting this, you know, you'll receive your first strike, and after 3 strikes, it's grounds for termination. You know, something like that in writing, and if you can properly document the amount of strikes, if you will, that you've given, or verbal warnings or written warnings for an employee, I think that's really important because, you know, God forbid if it ever did get taken to court, you do have a paper trail. You have documentation that you went about this the right way. You know, and with ADP, we do have some of that HR infrastructure that is really designed to support you in scenarios like this, whether it's the HR help desk and you're just calling in and asking, you know, this person did this, like, what would you recommend? How do I handle this? Is this grounds for termination? Is this a strike? You know, we kind of have that area of support, but I think really the key thing is just documentation and, you know, showing that paper trail.
Yeah, I will say that having done this in the past, that advice is more than paid for itself in legal fees I didn't have to pay. So,
Oh, good.
so we've got time for one last question here. Let me throw it out here. And this is a conundrum I've also faced in the past, but you had talked about the value of a ZipRecruiter. Now I'm going to show my age here because I can go back to the days of Monster.com. And in the days of Monster.com, I had hair. That's probably when I lost it because I pulled it out. So if you're recruiting and you're looking at something like ZipRecruiter, I mean, obviously your personal network, you know, talking to the restaurants, talking to people in the area can certainly help identify talent, which then you have to screen properly. But what makes ZipRecruiter special that works so well for you guys?
Yeah, you know, I would say something unique about ZipRecruiter is the ability to not only post, but also search resumes. So if you're not getting any qualified hits on your post, you can take it upon yourself to go through their resume database and really search for keywords to really help you narrow down candidates based on resumes that have been uploaded. And then I would say, you know, the reason I wanted to highlight ZipRecruiter is because it's just, there's data shows that within the food industry, it is the best job board for finding qualified candidates for whatever it is. Something about, you know, the food industry, ZipRecruiter is really producing those qualified candidates. So of course there's other job boards out there that you might want to try, but, you know, data shows that for your, you know, need, this is the best platform. You know, maybe it's just top of mind. I don't know if it's their advertising or what have you, but for some reason, you know, the food industry, it's an awesome, you know, fit. And I think, like I had said, not the ability to upload and also review is a huge plus, because you can get really frustrated if you're sitting there and nobody's, pinging you or applying to your post. It's frustrating. So the ability to, take it upon yourself and take a more proactive approach is a huge plus.
No doubt. No doubt. Well, that takes us right to our hour. So, Lauren, it couldn't have been better time. I so appreciate this because, for our members that have been in business for a while, this opportunity to grow and do new things is important. And, clearly adding employees is an area that is opportunity, but also potentially laden with pitfalls. So, again, from my own personal experience, having worked with ADP, and by the way, as a added piece, I didn't know Lauren, and I do thank Lauren McDougall for Laura shared Lauren with us. So, and Laura's had great success working with ADP, as have I in the past. So I thank you for that. But I think to Norbert's comments before, it's planning it out. It's really thinking through what you want to do, and then having the right resources like a Lauren and others that you can turn to for that expertise. It's a great chance to grow your business. Obviously, it takes people to do it. We all only have 24 hours in a day.
Absolutely.
And we somehow have to get to 72. Somebody else has to help you do it. And so if you do it right, there's a better chance you're going to do that 72 hours well. So Lauren, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
USPCA, and her contact information is here. As I shared, as we always do, we'll have this information up. And actually, Norbert just threw a question here. Hang on one second.
Yeah.
He threw in a number here. He said, how would you proceed if you had a 10% increase in business and then another 10%? How would you hire a person?
Yeah, I think, there's a couple ways to look at that. Maybe you start just part-time, maybe slowly onboard somebody part-time, or if you don't have a steady stream of business, maybe you do think about, is a W-2 the best fit, or is a contract 1099 somebody that you're just, using every now and again when you are running into jams that you can't or commitments that you can't fulfill yourself. So, if you don't really see the need to take somebody on full time, I think there are alternatives. Or, I guess you're really faced with the decision of, do you want to bring somebody on full time and cut back what you're doing and take a little cut? So that's probably not what people are leaning towards. So I think, thinking about part-time individuals or maybe contractors is a better option.
That's a great point, because the 1099 gives you a chance to see how someone would work.
Yes,
it
that's
minimizes
true.
your risk, so you can send them on the assignments. That's a great point, so I appreciate that. So Norbert agrees. So we're
Oh, great, Norbert.
all right. So once again, Lauren, thank you so much. I truly appreciate it. On
Thank
behalf
you for
of our
having
members,
me. Thank you, Laura, for the introduction.
it was great. We will be posting this up on YouTube here in the next 24 hours. And so all of Lauren's information will be there. Lauren, you'll send me that other information as well, so we make sure that we add that to it.
Absolutely,
and,
yes.
Everything we have from tonight. And of course, as always, the good news is, even if we don't get our members, because our members are working and other things, our hits to our YouTube channel have been tremendous. So we look forward to sharing this even further. But again, my thanks to all of you. And we have a couple more of our webinars coming up shortly, so watch for the announcements. And for that, everybody have a great Tuesday evening. Lauren, thanks again.
Thank you, guys. Enjoy
Bye-bye.
the evening.
Take care.
Bye.